Welcome to True Crime Cases, where we delve into the darkest corners of human nature. Today's episode unravels a tale of Sugar Mommy's obsession with young lover ends in tragic death. In the picturesque suburb of Rosewood Heights, nestled in the rolling hills just outside of Boston, life seemed to embody the very essence of the American dream. Stately colonial houses lined streets, shaded by century-old oak trees, while luxury cars gleamed in circular driveways. This enclave of wealth and privilege was home to captains of industry, renowned physicians, and high-powered attorneys. But beneath the polished exterior of one particular mansion on Magnolia Lane, a dark and twisted tale was unfolding, one that would ultimately lead to a shocking murder that shattered the community's sense of security and challenged its deepest assumptions about love, power, and obsession. At the center of this tragic case was Vivian Blackwood, a 54-year-old divorcee known for her sharp business acumen and philanthropic endeavors. Vivian had built her fortune from the ground up, transforming a small inheritance into a thriving chain of luxury spas catered to the elite across New England. With her statuesque figure, expertly styled chestnut hair, and designer wardrobe, Vivian exuded an aura of confidence and sophistication, turned heads wherever she went. Born into a middle-class family in rural Maine, Vivian had always dreamed of a life of luxury and status. She worked tirelessly through college and business school, driven by an almost pathological need to prove herself. Her marriage to Richard Blackwood, a successful corporate lawyer, had seemed like the final piece of her perfect life. But after 15 years and 2 children, the union crumbled under the weight of Richard's infidelity and Vivian's growing resentment. The divorce had been bitter and public, splashed across the society pages of Boston's newspaper. Vivian emerged victorious, her financial empire intact, but the experience left deep emotional scars. As she approached her 50s, Vivian became increasingly preoccupied with maintaining her youth and allure. She threw herself into a punishing regimen of diet, exercise, and cosmetic procedures, determined to defy the march of time. It was during one of her regular workout sessions at the exclusive Rosewood Country Club that Vivian first laid eyes on Mason Crawford. At 26, Mason was everything Vivian felt she was losing: young, vibrant, and full of untapped potential. With his chiseled physique, warm brown eyes, and easy charm, Mason quickly captured Vivian's attention. Mason had grown up in a working-class neighborhood of South Boston, the youngest of 4 children in a tight-knit Irish-American family. He had always been athletic, excelling in sports throughout high school. But a knee injury in his senior year had dashed his hopes of a college football scholarship. Instead, Mason had worked his way through community college, eventually earning a degree in exercise science and landing a job as a personal trainer, prestigious Rosewood Country Club. What began as innocent flirtation between Vivian and Mason soon blossomed into a full-fledged affair. Vivian was intoxicated by Mason's youthful energy and genuine warmth. For the first time since her divorce, she felt truly desired and appreciated. Mason, in turn, was drawn to Vivian's confidence, intelligence, and the glimpse she offered into a world of luxury he had only dreamed of experiencing. As their relationship intensified, Vivian's behavior began to change. She increased her visits to plastic surgeons and spent small fortunes on anti-aging treatments. Her friends noticed that she became more withdrawn from her usual social circles, focusing all her attention on Mason and their relationship. Vivian's children, 24-year-old Abigail and 22-year-old Nathan, grew concerned about their mother's new obsession, but felt powerless to intervene. Vivian showered Mason with expensive gifts, designer clothes, luxury watch, even a sports car. She took him on exotic vacations to tropical islands and European cities, reveling in the envious glances they received from onlookers. For Mason, the relationship was a whirlwind of new experiences and indulgences. But as the months wore on, he began to feel the weight of Vivian's expectations and possessiveness. Mason's family and friends watched his transformation with a mixture of awe and concern. His older sister, Maggie, worried that Mason was losing sight of his own goals and values. His best friend and fellow trainer, Jake Sullivan, noticed that Mason seemed increasingly anxious and conflicted. In moments of candor, Mason confided in Jake that while he cared for Vivian and enjoyed the perks of their relationship, he felt trapped by her jealousy and demands on his time. The situation took a dark turn when Vivian discovered that Mason had been spending time with Zoe Chen, 23-year-old medical student who often worked out at the country club. Zoe, her natural beauty, intelligence, and ambitious drive, represented everything Vivian feared she was losing. She saw in Zoe a younger version of herself, and the thought of Mason being attracted to her was unbearable. Consumed by jealousy, Vivian's behavior became increasingly erratic. She began showing up unannounced at Mason's modest apartment, calling him incessantly, and even hiring a private investigator to follow him. She used her influence at the country club to have Zoe's membership revoked on a technicality, a move that shocked many and led to whispers about Vivian's mental state. Mason felt suffocated by Vivian's possessiveness, but was unsure how to extricate himself from the relationship. He had become accustomed to the luxurious lifestyle Vivian provided, and worried about the professional repercussions if he ended things badly. Many of his wealthy clients at the country club were friends with Vivian, and he feared she could easily ruin his reputation and career. On the night of September 22, 2023, tensions that had been building for months finally erupted into violence. Vivian had planned an intimate dinner at her mansion, complete with caviar, champagne, and a private chef. She had hopes of persuading Mason to move in with her permanently, seeing it as a way to keep him under her constant watch and away from the temptations of younger women. However, the evening took a devastating turn when Mason arrived late, his hair slightly disheveled and smelling faintly of a perfume that Vivian recognized as Zoe's signature scent. In a fit of rage, Vivian confronted Mason about his relationship with Zoe. The argument quickly escalated, with Vivian alternating between tearful pleas and vicious threats. What happened next would shock the community of Rosewood Heights and make headlines across the country. In the heat of the argument, Vivian grabbed a heavy crystal wine decanter from the dining table and struck Mason over the head with all her might. The force of the blow was so severe that Mason collapsed instantly, blood pooling around his motionless body on the imported Italian marble floor. As the reality of what she had done sank in, Vivian's mind raced. She couldn't bear the thought of losing everything she had worked for. Her reputation, her business empire, her freedom. In a panic, she decided to cover up her crime, drawing on her knowledge of forensic TV shows to guide her actions. Over the next few hours, Vivian meticulously cleaned the crime scene. She wrapped Mason's body in an expensive Persian rug and with great difficulty managed to drag it to her garage. There, she loaded it into the trunk of her Mercedes SUV, her hands shaking and tears streaming down her face. In the dead of night, Vivian drove to a remote area of the nearby Blue Hills Reservation. With a mixture of grief, fear, and determination, she buried Mason's body in a shallow grave, covering it with leaves and branches. As she drove home in the pre-dawn light, Vivian's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, shock at what she had done, fear of being caught, and a twisted sense of relief that Mason could never leave her now. The next day, Vivian reported to work as usual, maintaining a facade of normalcy that would later astonish investigators. She attended meetings, made phone calls, and even had lunch with a friend, all while carrying the terrible secret of what she had done. 2 days after Mason's death, his roommate, Carlos Ramirez, reported him missing. Carlos had become concerned when Mason failed to return home and wasn't responding to calls or texts, which was highly out of character. The Rosewood Heights Police Department launched an investigation, led by Detective Alexandra Morgan, a veteran investigator known for her sharp intellect and dogged persistence. As she began to dig into Mason's disappearance, Detective Morgan quickly focused on his relationship with Vivian Blackwood. Interviews with Mason's friends and co-workers painted a picture of a relationship marked by Vivian's possessiveness and Mason's growing discomfort. Jake Sullivan provided crucial information about Mason's fears and his desire to end the relationship with Vivian. When questioned by police, Vivian maintained her composure, expressing shock and concern over Mason's disappearance. She claimed that Mason had left her house on the night of September 22nd after a pleasant dinner, and she hadn't heard from him since. Her wealth and status in the community initially shielded her from serious suspicion. However, Detective Morgan's instincts told her that Vivian wasn't being entirely truthful. She noticed small inconsistencies in Vivian's case, and the way she avoided making eye contact when discussing certain details of her relationship with Mason. As the investigation progressed, evidence began to mount against Vivian. Security camera footage from a gas station near the Blue Hills Reservation showed Vivian's distinctive Mercedes SUV driving in the area on the night of Mason's disappearance. This contradicted her statement that she had been home all night. A breakthrough came when police discovered traces of blood in Vivian's garage, despite her efforts to clean the area thoroughly. Forensic analysis confirmed it was Mason's blood type. Armed with this evidence, Detective Morgan obtained a warrant to search Vivian's property more thoroughly. The search revealed more damning evidence. In a hidden safe in Vivian's bedroom, police found a journal detailing her obsession with Mason and her growing paranoia about losing him to a younger woman. The final entry, dated September 22nd, contained a chilling line, "I'd rather see him dead than with someone else." Faced with the mounting evidence against her, Vivian's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. During a grueling 12-hour interrogation, she finally broke down and confessed to killing Mason in a fit of jealous rage. Vivian led the police to Mason's makeshift grave in the Blue Hills Reservation. The discovery of his body sent shockwaves through the community of Rosewood Heights. Friends and family, who had been holding out hope for Mason's safe return, were devastated by the news of his violent death. The case of Vivian Blackwood and Mason Crawford dominated local and national news cycles for weeks. The salacious details of their May-December romance, combined with the brutal nature of the crime, captivated the public's attention. True crime podcasts dissected every aspect of the case, while social media buzzed with theories and commentary. Vivian's arrest and subsequent trial became a media spectacle. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, hoping to catch a glimpse of the once-celebrated businesswoman now branded a murderer. The case sparked intense debates about age-gap relationships, wealth disparity, and the dark side of obsession. Throughout the proceedings, Vivian sat motionless at the defense table, her once impeccable appearance now haggard and worn. The confident, sociable woman who had once been the toast of Boston's high society was now a shell of her former self. Prosecution, led by District Attorney Sarah Goldstein, painted Vivian as a possessive, unstable woman who couldn't handle the idea of losing her young lover. They argued that the murder was premeditated, citing the journal entries as evidence of Vivian's state of mind leading up to the killing. D.A. Goldstein called a series of witnesses who testified to Vivian's increasingly erratic behavior in the months leading up to Mason's death. Jake Sullivan's testimony was particularly damning, as he recounted conversations where Mason had expressed fear of Vivian's obsessive behavior. Vivian's defense team, led by high-profile attorney Maxwell Rhodes, had tried to portray her as a victim of manipulation, arguing that Mason had taken advantage of her wealth and insecurities. They pushed for a charge of manslaughter, claiming that Vivian had acted in the heat of passion and had not intended to kill Mason. The defense called character witnesses who spoke of Vivian's philanthropic work and her contributions to the community. They also brought in a psychologist who testified about the emotional trauma of Vivian's divorce and her struggles with aging in a society that values youth and beauty. One of the most dramatic moments of the trial came when Zoe Chen took the stand. She tearfully recounted her friendship with Mason and the harassment she had faced from Vivian. Her testimony painted a vivid picture of Vivian's jealousy and vindictiveness. Vivian herself took the stand in a risky move by her defense team. She expressed remorse for her actions, but maintained that she had not meant to kill Mason. Under cross-examination, however, she struggled to explain the discrepancies in her initial statements to the police and the damning evidence found in her journal. After a 4-week trial that captivated the nation, the jury found Vivian Blackwood guilty of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 25 years. The verdict brought a sense of closure to Mason's family. The pain of his loss continued to resonate. His parents, John and Mary Crawford, spoke outside the courthouse after the sentencing, expressing their relief that justice had been served, but acknowledging that no punishment could bring back their son. In the aftermath of the trial, the community of Rosewood Heights was left to grapple with the shocking reality such a brutal crime had occurred in their midst. The case sparked discussions about the dynamics of age gap relationships, the dangers of obsession, and the sometimes deceptive nature of wealth and status. Zoe Chen, who had unwittingly played a role in the tragic events, struggled with feelings of guilt. She sought therapy to deal with the trauma of knowing that her friendship with Mason had contributed to his death. In time, she would use her experience to advocate for awareness about toxic relationships and the importance of recognizing warning signs. Jake Sullivan, Mason's close friend and confidant, became an outspoken advocate for domestic violence awareness, sharing Mason's case as a reminder that abuse can occur in all types of relationships, regardless of gender or socioeconomic status. He started a foundation in Mason's name, providing support and resources for men who are victims of domestic abuse. Detective Alexandra Morgan received commendations for her work on the case. Her methodical approach and attention to detail had been crucial in bringing Vivian to justice. The case would go on to be studied by law enforcement agencies as an example of effective investigative techniques in high-profile murders. As for Vivian Blackwood, all from grace was complete. Her business empire crumbled as investors and clients distanced themselves from the scandal. Charities and organizations she had once supported severed ties, eager to disassociate themselves from her name. In prison, Vivian was a shadow of her former self. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly coiffed hair, replaced by a standard-issue jumpsuit and a haunted expression. She spent her days in relative isolation, shunned by other inmates who viewed her crime as particularly heinous. Vivian's ex-husband, Richard Blackwood, broke his silence in a rare interview 2 years after her conviction. He spoke of the warning signs he had seen during their marriage, Vivian's insecurity, her need for constant validation, and her fear of aging. Richard expressed regret for not recognizing the extent of Vivian's mental health issues earlier, wondering if intervention could have prevented the tragic events that unfolded. Vivian's children, Abigail and Nathan, found themselves thrust into the spotlight against their will. They struggled to reconcile the loving mother they knew with the woman capable of such a violent act. In time, they would become advocates for mental health awareness, using their family's tragedy as a cautionary tale about the importance of addressing psychological issues before they spiral out of control. The case of Vivian Blackwood and Mason Crawford continued to fascinate the public long after the trial concluded. True crime podcasts dissected every detail of the investigation and court proceeding. Books were written examining the psychological factors that led to the murder. There was even talk of a Hollywood film adaptation, though Mason's family vehemently opposed any attempts to profit from their son's tragic death. In Rosewood Heights, life slowly returned to normal. The community was forever changed. The illusion of safety that wealth and status had provided was shattered. Neighbors looked at each other with newfound suspicion, wondering what secrets might be hiding behind the manicured lawns and pristine facades. The Rosewood Country Club, where Mason had worked and where his relationship with Vivian had begun, came a somber reminder of the tragedy. The management installed a small memorial plaque in Mason's honor, a gesture that received mixed reactions from the community. Some saw it as a fitting tribute, while others felt it was a constant, uncomfortable reminder of the dark events that had unfolded. As years passed, the case of Vivian and Mason became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the destructive power of obsession and the sometimes blurry line between love and possession. It served as a wake-up call for many in similar relationships, prompting them to reevaluate their dynamics and seek help if needed. The tragedy also sparked important conversations about mental health and the pressures faced by women as they age. In a society that often values youth above all else, psychologists and sociologists studied the case, using it to illustrate the dangers of tying one's self-worth too closely to physical appearance and the ability to attract younger partners. 5 years after the murder, new evidence came to light that shed additional insight into the case. A former employee of Vivian's spa chain came forward with emails and text messages that revealed Vivian had been struggling with severe depression and anxiety in the months leading up to Mason's death. These communications showed that Vivian had reached out for help, but had ultimately decided against seeking professional treatment, fearing it would damage her reputation. This new information reignited public interest in the case and led to debates about the role of mental health in criminal proceedings. Some argued that this evidence might have altered the outcome of the trial if it had been available at the time. Others maintained that while it provided context, it did not excuse Vivian's actions. The revelation prompted calls for better mental health support systems, especially for high-achieving individuals who might be reluctant to acknowledge their struggles. Several prominent business leaders in the Boston area, inspired by the case, launched initiatives to provide confidential mental health resources for executives and entrepreneurs. As the 10th anniversary of Mason's death approached, the town of Rosewood Heights planned a memorial service to honor his memory and reflect on the lessons learned from the tragedy. The event brought together Mason's family, friends, and community members who had been affected by the case. During the service, Jake Sullivan gave a moving speech about Mason's impact on those around him and the importance of recognizing and addressing toxic relationship dynamics. He spoke of the red flags he had noticed in Mason's relationship with Vivian and his regret at not pushing harder to help his friend escape the situation. Zoe Chen, who had struggled with guilt for years, found some measure of peace at the memorial. She connected with Mason's family for the first time, sharing happy memories of her friendship with Mason and apologizing for any role she might have played in the events leading to his death. The Crawfords embraced her, assuring her that they held no ill will towards her, and that Mason would have wanted her to live her life free from guilt. Detective Alexandra Morgan, now the chief of police in Rosewood Heights, also attended the memorial. She spoke about the impact the case had on her career and the broader implications for law enforcement. Morgan emphasized the importance of taking all relationship violence seriously, regardless of the gender or social status of those involved. In the years following the tragedy, Mason's sister Maggie had become a counselor specializing in helping young adults navigate complicated relationships. At the memorial, she announced the launch of the Mason Crawford Foundation, which would provide resources and support for individuals dealing with controlling or abusive partners. The foundation quickly gained support from unexpected quarters. Several of Vivian's former business associates seeking to make amends for their past association with her became major donors. The foundation's work in schools and universities across New England helped raise awareness about the signs of unhealthy relationships and provided a lifeline for many young people in difficult situations. Meanwhile, in prison, Vivian Blackwood's life had taken yet another turn. After years of therapy and self-reflection, she had begun to truly grasp the magnitude of her action and the pain she had caused. She started writing a memoir, not to absolve herself of guilt, but to explore the psychological factors that had led her to such a desperate act. The memoir, titled Shattered Reflections, A Cautionary Tale, was published on the 12th anniversary of Mason's death. It became an instant bestseller, sparking renewed discussions about mental health, aging, and societal pressures. While some criticized the publication as an attempt to profit from tragedy, many found value in its unflinching examination of toxic relationships and the dangers of unchecked obsession. Vivian pledged all proceeds from the book to the Mason Crawford Foundation, a gesture that was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a genuine attempt at redemption, while others viewed it as too little, too late. The Crawford family, after much deliberation, decided to accept the funds, seeing it as a way to create something positive from their immense loss. The case continued to have ripple effects in the legal world as well. Law schools began using it as a case study in criminal justice courses, examining the intersection of mental health, wealth, and justice. The trial transcripts and Detective Morgan's meticulous investigation became required reading for aspiring lawyers and law enforcement officers. In Rosewood Heights, the community had slowly healed. The scars remained. The Blackwood mansion, once the crown jewel of Magnolia Lane, stood empty for years, a silent testament to the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Eventually, it was purchased by a non-profit organization and converted into a wellness center, offering counseling services and support groups for individuals dealing with mental health issues and relationship problems. Mason's parents, Sean and Mary Crawford, found purpose in their pain by becoming advocates for domestic violence awareness. They traveled across the country, sharing Mason's case and emphasizing that abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of gender or background. Their work helped challenge stereotypes and encouraged more men to seek help when in abusive relationships. As for Zoe Chen, the young medical student whose friendship with Mason had unknowingly set the tragic events in motion, she went on to become a respected psychiatrist. Specializing in trauma and relationship issues, she often drew upon her personal experience to help her patient. Zoe's research on the psychological impact of age gap relationships gained recognition in academic circles and contributed to a better understanding of the dynamics at play in such partnerships. The media's fascination with the case never fully faded. On the 15th anniversary of Mason's death, a popular streaming service released a multi-part documentary series exploring the case in depth. The series, titled Love, Lies, and Obsession: The Vivian Blackwood Case, reignited public interest and introduced a new generation to the tragic tale. The documentary featured interviews with key figures involved in the case, including Detective Morgan, Jake Sullivan, and even Vivian Blackwood herself, speaking from prison. It also delved into the broader societal issues highlighted by the case, such as ageism, mental health stigma, and the dark side of wealth and privilege. While the series was praised for its comprehensive approach, it also faced criticism for potentially glorifying a brutal crime. The Crawford family, who had declined to participate in the project, expressed their disappointment that their son's death was being used for entertainment. As the years passed, the case of Vivian Blackwood and Mason Crawford became more than just a sensational crime case. It became a cultural touchstone, cautionary tale that continued to resonate with people across generations. It sparked conversations about the nature of love, the dangers of obsession, and the importance of mental health awareness. In Rosewood Heights, life went on. New families moved into the neighborhood, bringing with them a sense of renewal. The annual town fair, once a place of sorrowful memories, became a celebration of community resilience and unity. Yet, for those who had lived through the events of that fateful September night, the memories remained vivid. Mason's friends often gathered to reminisce about him, sharing stories and laughter, keeping his memory alive in their hearts. They found comfort in each other, knowing that Mason's legacy would continue to inspire and touch lives for generations to come. As for Vivian Blackwood, she continued to serve her sentence, a living reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy and obsession. Her case became a subject of study for criminologists and psychologists, who sought to understand the complex factors that could drive a person to such extremes. In the end, the tragedy of Vivian Blackwood and Mason Crawford served as a stark reminder that beneath the surface of even the most seemingly perfect lives, deep currents of emotion and turmoil can run. It highlighted the importance of empathy, mental health support, and the need to look beyond appearances to truly understand and help those around us. The case left an indelible mark on all those involved, from the families directly affected to the community at large. It became a part of Rosewood Heights' history, a somber chapter that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. As time passed, the raw pain of the tragedy gradually gave way to reflection and a determination to learn from the past. The case of Vivian and Mason became more than just a tale of crime and punishment. It became a catalyst for change, prompting discussions about age gap relationships, power dynamics, and the societal pressures that can push individuals to desperate acts. While nothing could undo the pain caused by Mason's untimely death, the legacy of the case continued to impact lives, potentially preventing future tragedies by raising awareness and encouraging intervention. As the sun set on another day in Rosewood Heights, the community continued to move forward. Forever changed by the events that had unfolded within its borders, the tragic tale of the sugar mommy and her young lover had become a part of the town's fabric, a reminder of the complexities of human nature and the unforeseen consequences of our deepest desires and fears. The case of Vivian Blackwood and Mason Crawford continues to be a subject of fascination and study, serving as a stark reminder of the dark undercurrents that can exist beneath even the most polished surfaces. It stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of obsession, complexities of age-gap relationships, and the sometimes deadly consequences of unchecked jealousy and insecurity. As we close this chapter of True Crime Cases, we would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to all those who contributed to the telling of this tragic case. Our gratitude goes out to the law enforcement officers, particularly Detective Alexandra Morgan, whose tireless efforts brought justice to Mason and his family. We also thank the friends and family members of both Mason and Vivian, who shared their insights and memories, helping us piece together this complex narrative. Special acknowledgement goes to Jake Sullivan and Zoe Chen, whose courage in speaking out has helped raise awareness about domestic violence and toxic relationships. Their ongoing advocacy work continues to make a difference in the lives of many. We are deeply appreciative of the Crawford family for allowing us to share Mason's case in the hope that it might prevent similar tragedies in the future. Our thoughts remain with them as they continue to honor Mason's memory. To our viewers, your continued support and engagement with true crime cases drive us to bring these important stories to light. Your interest not only helps keep the memories of victims alive, but also contributes to broader discussions about societal issues reflected in these cases. Remember, behind every crime is a human case. By understanding these stories, we hope to foster empathy, awareness, and ultimately a safer society for all. Until next time, this is True Crime Cases signing off.